In my career as a defense attorney, I've handled some of New York's biggest white-collar crimes, including defending those accused of insider trading and political corruption.
Today, Vinny is going to review financial crimes in TV and movies to determine what Hollywood gets right and wrong.
As you're watching these clips, bear in mind that anyone can be a victim of financial crime, not some little old lady, but also the college-educated person who thinks he or she knows what he's doing when it comes to money. First up, Catch Me If You Can. In this scene, young Leo, playing Frank Abagnale, is forging checks.
Earn my wings real soon. Please get in touch with Joanna Carlton from the 10th grade. Tell her I'm sorry that I could not take her to the junior prom. Love, your son, Frank.
So, a lot of fun facts here about Frank Abagnale. In 1967, he was able to pass the Louisiana bar exam without ever having gone to law school. I mean, there's so much about this guy. Ultimately, he became an FBI informant, and now he runs a consulting company. In this scene, he is creating a fake check. And he does that by using the actual logo, by putting it in a tub and pasting it onto this piece of paper. Today, you could do all of this in 15 minutes. Didn't have to go through the whole rigmarole that he went through back during the movie back in those days. So it's a lot easier today, but of course, very few people use checks, and therefore it makes it, these checks are scrutinized more when they're actually put into a bank.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
So bank tellers or people that work at check cashing places are trained to look out for imperfections in a check. Check fraud is actually monitored by the banks. So check kiting is the crime. They'll see a check, they'll see something off, and they will actually call the authorities from there while they're processing these checks. Next up, Terminator II. In this scene, you see a young John Connor using an Atari laptop machine to steal money from an ATM.
Will you hurry up? This is taking too long.
Go baby, go baby, go baby. All right. Pin number 9.
Computers, ATMs, they've gotten more sophisticated. There are a lot more protection, so some of these things will shut down and not allow an opportunity to use and get multiple numbers wrong. So, in essence, is this accurate from today's standards? Not really. I mean, this was something that back then, years ago, that you could do, which was try to randomize numbers to figure out the pin. But today, it's unlikely that something like this would work.
Who'd you learn this stuff from anyway?
From my mom, my real mom, I mean. Withdraw $300. Come on, baby, come on, come on, come on. Yes!
Hey, it worked.
All right. Easy money.
So young John Connor has an accomplice with him. So that kid who's with him, telling him to hurry up, clearly is somebody that in New York would be called acting in concert with him, or at the federal level would be called a co-conspirator, because they work together to get an illegal means accomplished, in this case, stealing money.
Come on, let's go spend some money.
So in 1991, when James Cameron released this movie, it would have been a lot more difficult to capture John Connor. But in 2020, it's going to be pretty easy for the cops and the banks to chase somebody because they'll have cameras inside and cameras outside, and they can go after these people retracing their steps. Next up, Mr. Robot. In this scene, the main character has found a way to transfer money from a Chinese hacker group back into the accounts of the people who originally had their money stolen.
I don't get it. What's going on?
All of the money White Rose and her cronies have been stealing for decades just went back to the people.
So in the scene, you see the main character, in essence, acting like a Robin Hood and taking money from the thieves or the rich and giving it back to the poor, or in this case, the ones who were defrauded. It's a great concept morally, and in reality, something like this could happen. But you can't do what she's trying to do, or no individual can do what she's trying to do, because it does involve fraud over the wires, and the U.S. government likes to charge everyone with wire fraud.
How? We found a way to evenly disperse it anonymously into everyone's eCoin wallets.
Everyone got this much.
Yep. And due to eCorp's insistence that eCoin remain independent from the US dollar, it is completely impossible for them to reverse the transactions.
So you're actually viewing in this scene, in essence, hacking, right? Which is ultimately just stealing. Now, it is a crime. Ultimately, if this actually ever happened, the U.S. government would be in a tough position, because do they punish the person who is actually making people whole? It's a tough one. I'm not sure which way they would go.
This is illegal. This is stealing.
After what the Dark Army did to you? Fuck, after what they did to everyone, you really want to start defending them?
This isn't what justice is supposed to look like. We have laws for a reason.
And they were so powerful they wrote the laws to benefit themselves. They got away with everything because they banked on us.
So let me add this. In terms of how easy it is for the United States government to prosecute someone who's involved in Bitcoin fraud, it's not. You know why? Because the U.S. government doesn't understand this space. They are really operating in the dark and making guesses and trying to use their knowledge of traditional wire fraud and try to apply it here, but it doesn't really work. So you can expect to see a lot of change in the laws and the government try to catch up over the next few years. Next up, Wolf of Wall Street. In this scene, you're going to be watching DiCaprio teach his underlings how to run a pump and dump scheme involving penny stocks.
First, we pitch them Disney, AT&T, IBM, blue chip stocks exclusively. Companies these people know. Once we've suckered them in, we unload the dog shit, the pink sheets, the penny stocks, where we make the money. 50% commission, baby.
In the scene, Belfort is teaching his underlings how to do a classic pump and dump scheme by ultimately selling penny stocks. These brokers are going to get 50% commission. This was very profitable until the FBI shut this down. In a pump and dump scheme, a brokerage house would buy large quantities of some very cheap stock, a penny stock, and hold it, a bunch of it, for themselves, and then designate somebody to move these stocks. And what they do is that they pitch this to clients by paying the brokers a high commission to motivate them to move it. Once the demand peaks, the rat hole dumpers dump their stock on the open market at the high price and make a killing. This causes a free fall in the stock prices as they sell. It's technically not illegal to sell an over-the-counter stock like they were doing, and even the commission amount is not illegal, but no one's going to buy something if they know the broker's got a 50% commission. That's a huge red flag. So what's illegal is not being honest and open about the actual price and the fact that there is a nominee there to dump the stock once it hits a certain price.
You finally found a broker on Wall Street that you can trust.
Sorry, I appreciate the call. I really have to give this some thought and talk to my wife about it. Can I call you back?
They don't know, right? They gotta think about it, they gotta talk to their fucking wives or the fucking tooth fairy. Point is, it doesn't matter what the fuck they say. The only real objection that they have is that they don't trust you guys.
So when Leonardo DiCaprio says you finally found a broker on Wall Street who you can trust and consistently make you money, but you watch him and you see what he's doing and he's mocking the person on the other line, this is actually what happened. The movie is very real. Jordan ended up pleading guilty to stock fraud manipulation, and his whole company was shut down. So what you're seeing here is really how these people in these rooms, these boiler rooms, and that was another movie, similar concept, in these boiler rooms behave. Next up, identity theft. In this scene, Melissa McCarthy, a con artist, albeit a funny one, is making a cold call to steal someone's identity.
From the Fraud Protection Department of Identivolt Credit Monitoring Service, we're calling today because unfortunately it appears that someone has attempted to steal your identity.
Are you kidding me?
This is a type of identity theft. There's many different types. This is one. And in the movie, it's funny because it's Melissa McCarthy, but this is actually realistic. Stuff like this happens. Stuff like this happens when people call elderly people, call immigrants, or send them emails like this. And then they answer their emails and end up giving up their personal information, including social security numbers. That leads to people opening up credit cards in their names and losing lots and lots of money.
Are you kidding me?
Gosh, I wish I were. We did catch this in time, however, but I do suggest you taking advantage of our free Total Protection Plan, which safeguards your credit rating against theft and fraud.
Yes, please. If it's free, absolutely.
Just terrific. I went for this plan myself.
So one of the things that Melissa McCarthy does in this movie, or the writers have done, is actually take something that these swindlers do quite well, which is personalizing it. So they will say, Melissa McCarthy says to Jason Bateman, I've taken this myself, and does it in this sweet voice. This is a move designed to build trust, build rapport, and create a false sense of empathy. Oh man, this guy, she knows what I've gone through. So of course I'm going to trust her. Of course I'm going to give her my social security number.
Mr. Patterson, I'm going to need to verify some information from you. I'm going to need your full name, date of birth, and social security number, please.
Sure, understood. Here it comes.
Things like date of birth, social security number, even a cell phone number is often enough to get information. So if somebody has your cell phone number and has your name, and if they have access to a database, they can then figure out a way to get other information, like your date of birth, like your social security number, even if they don't get that from you on the phone. So if somebody says, I'm not comfortable giving you my social security number, no worries, just give us your date of birth. Kind of feel like you're giving something. Okay, that's safe, and boom, they can get you.
What can I get for you?
I'm going to have a melon ball and some tequila. And let's turn a tap.
Look, in reality, a swindler as sophisticated as McCarthy is probably not going to use that money at a bar. Will probably use that money to go to a Best Buy, a Home Depot, and buy different things and keep using that card until somebody figures it out. And then they move on to the next card. We had a client who went on a 3-state or 4-state spending spree, but he did it in small amounts, at a Foot Locker here, a Foot Locker in the Bronx, a Foot Locker in Westchester, a Foot Locker in Connecticut, a Foot Locker in Massachusetts. And ultimately, it took over a year, and about 30 people were swindled, and a total of $250,000. And this was a state prosecution out of New York and Westchester County, and not a federal prosecution because the feds weren't interested because the amounts weren't large enough for their interest. Next up, Billions. In this scene of Billions, you will see Bobby Axelrod, one of the main characters, get inside information about the father of his nemesis. But he's not interested in the inside information to so much make money as to destroy his nemesis.
I got word from the boys at Spartan Knives. Chuck Rhodes Sr. has taken a significant stake in a company that's going public. Ice Juice.
No shit.
And insofar as you hate the Rhodes family almost as much as I do,
that could be pleasant.
Be fun if you could find a way to lob a turd in the punch bowl.
Yeah. Real fun.
In this scene, you see Bobby Axelrod get inside information about the activities of the father of his nemesis, the United States Attorney. In the show, the United States Attorney, played by Paul Giamatti, has a very rich father. And so Bobby wants to destroy the U.S. Attorney, and he can do that by hurting the father. So he gets inside information about what the father is going to do, but what he does or he attempts to do could never happen in real life.
I'll make sure to take a sizable allocation.
So you'd have cover?
Yeah, take the free money up front, throw it in the reverse, and I'd short every tick on the way down.
An IPO is an initial public offering, and so, for example, when in most recent years, companies like Uber went public. That means it went from being a closed company with private owners to allowing the general public to buy stocks and benefit. So in this scene, Bobby Axelrod is taking what he calls a sizable allocation. Then he plans to dump that allocation all at once on the market while the IPO is hot. This scene is ludicrous because in reality, no one would be able to get that kind of information on a company going public, and there are safeguards in place to prevent a person doing what he intends or is trying to do in this scene. It's great theater for Hollywood, but just not at all realistic. Next up, Office Space. Ron Livingston's character is describing his plan to steal money from his company through a cyber scheme.
All right, so when the subroutine compounds the interest, right, it uses all these extra decimal places that just get rounded off. So we simplified the whole thing, and we round them all down and just drop the remainder into an account that we opened.
So this is a case of literally transferring funds from the banker's accounts into his own. I mean, this is just theft. This same scheme was used by Richard Pryor's character in Superman 3 and in the movie Hackers. This was actually a real thing, and this was a problem with users of Excel that eventually later on people figured out, or Microsoft figured out how to fix this problem.
So you're stealing?
No, you don't understand. It's very complicated. It's aggregate, so I'm talking about fractions of a penny here, and over time, they add up to a lot.
Oh, okay.
So in the scene, it's very funny because his girlfriend figures it out right away, and he's caught. He thinks it's not stealing because all he's doing is taking fractions of pennies. But once you start doing it in the millions of transactions, it leads to millions of dollars of losses. Then you're going to bite off more than you can chew.
Oh, okay. So you're going to make a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's not yours?
Well, it becomes ours.
How is that not stealing?
So in reality, if you're caught doing something like this and the amount you steal exceeds a couple $1 million, you could be looking at significant jail time from at least 10 years and up. Last up, Arbitrage. In this scene, what you're going to see is the unraveling of a Ponzi scheme.
Dad, are you listening to me?
Yeah, of course I'm listening.
Okay, those trades are in the special book. They don't get audited here on the same balance sheet.
Wait, but look at the sheet. There's a $400 million hole here. I mean, that can't be right.
In this scene, you see Richard Gere's daughter catching him and pointing out a huge discrepancy. Half of the funds are missing. And he's like, oh, that's ridiculous. I'll look into it, he tells her, tries to push her off. And at the same time, you see a detective coming into the workplace. The point is that it's unlikely a detective is going to be the one investigating this. Why? Because it's not the state. It's going to be the feds that come in for $400 million. You bet the feds are going to be interested in something like this.
Oh, Peter, listen, I'm looking at some statements right now. How much did you book last quarter?
Why? What do you care?
Peter, I'm really just asking you.
All right, 35.
35 million for your whole group.
Yes, 35 million for my entire group.
You sure it wasn't 68?
What, 35 million isn't a big enough number for you?
So what you're seeing in this scene is somewhat actually realistic, because what's happened is that the fraud is being perpetrated with the knowledge or with the assistance of somebody who controls the numbers. So the daughter, Richard Gere's daughter, figures out that a number was dramatically misrepresented. She calls a guy who only says he made 35 million, but the number says something in excess of 60 million. So she catches him and realizes now that there was internal fraud.
What are you doing in my office?
Hello?
Can you explain these?
Explain what?
Old Hill? All the numbers you falsified?
What this means in reality is that at these companies that are not publicly traded, where you have external audits mandated by SEC regulations, Here you have a essence, what's a fraud, what's a conspiracy between multiple people at the same company to cook the books, to attract more investors, to make up for the losses that have incurred.
All the numbers you falsified?
You don't know what you're saying.
Get out of my way. You're hurting my arm.
Can't you just leave it alone?
You're fired, Ben.
You can't fire me.
Oh, I just did.
Who do you think asked me to make those changes?
You tell me.
In this clip, you see the daughter, who obviously is in a position of power in this company, fire the employee, but then the employee tells her, who do you think I was covering for? Meaning her dad. Well, in reality, that employee would probably not be fired initially, but would be working with the father to try to cover this up. He is your classic co-conspirator who worked with the person to make the fraudulent entries, to give the false prospectuses which they send out to investors. I hope you'll take away from this that Hollywood sometimes has it right, Hollywood sometimes has it wrong. And what they've done, and this is the biggest sin of Hollywood, is that there's no gray area. They portray people as either completely evil or completely good, and the world just doesn't work that way.